All right, so hopefully we are live. I have not actually gone live in super long time, and actually trying something a little bit different this time. So going live via the Restream app. So hopefully, I'm just right now going to test some of these streams, seeing if they actually are live or not. And okay, it looks like on YouTube we're live over there. So just let me know. I don't know if you guys let me know how we're sounding, because part of this is a test too, just to see just make sure everything is working over here. And I imagine it will take a little bit before everybody jumps on here. But okay, looks like the Liberty Advisor page. We're streaming there. We're actually not streaming on X right now. There was something with the Restream connection where it wasn't wanting to connect to that. But on Odyssey, on Rumble, a Facebook page, whatever good that does, because they decided to show it to about 30 people, reach 30 people. But, anyways, yeah, it's been a long time since we've been doing this, especially on YouTube, because I've had basically on and off 2 strikes for pretty much the past 4 years, and every time one strike rolls off, they'll hit it back with some other video I did from 3, 4 years ago, and, it's just been constant, BS, dealing with things over there. And if you are watching this on the Change the News channel, yeah, I'm the guy that was doing videos with the other guy whose name rhymes with puke. And over there, it just got to the point where we were not changing the news anymore. So you can check out the latest video over there. I'm not going to get into any of that today. Not giving any more attention over that for what that entails. But yeah, if you are watching this, appreciate you being here. But the last two selections, I was just about into the market, into geopolitics pretty much more than anybody, and I do not say that with bragging, because believe me, it was just pretty much a waste of time. Over the past 16 years, being super super in the trenches. But with that said, I was pretty good at being able to figure out who the globalists are going to pick. To pretty much a crazy extent, and for all of my longtime viewers and listeners, you guys, I've mentioned numerous times that in one of the very first videos I ever made in 2016, predicted that Trump was going to win. Everyone. I mean, I was having family members stage interventions with me, sitting me down, telling me how stupid I sounded. But not only did I say Trump was gonna win, I said they were gonna blame it on the Russians, why they blame it on the Russians, and pretty much nailed it. And then going back to March of 2017, never recanted since. So 2017 all the way up to the 2020 selection, said Trump was gonna lose. Anarchapulco had a PowerPoint of states that they would steal. The only state I missed on there was Georgia. Why it didn't work in 2016, why they'd be successful in 2020. And anyways, for any of my long-term listeners, you guys have heard me say that a million times. But, I really, honestly, I mean, I vote every day. I vote with where we place our attention, where we place which, I am grateful for anyone watching this right now, anyone watching this on the replay. Vote with, uh, where we spend our money. That's a big one. Vote with what we allow into our vote vortex. I mean, those are some of the most important votes that we have. So, I wouldn't say I vote by, pretty much every day. A big reason why I haven't been doing videos the past 2 years is trying to get more self-sufficient. I'm, out making a food forest in my backyard, got the greenhouse going, every day trying to just move the ball forward, so that way I don't have to comply with their tyranny, don't have to comply with their nonsense. Just came back from Sedona, where I was at the Art of Liberty uh, at their foundations. It was called Sedona on the Rock, or sorry, it was called Liberty on the Rocks from the Art of Liberty Foundation. You've got Howard's book behind me, and Etienne de la Boissy squared, and that was just a great conference of a lot of free thinkers who are pretty much all down the rabbit hole enough to know that, voting really doesn't matter. But, for anyone on here, that's going to get mad at me for anything I say, you can go to the complaint department where, I pretty much don't care at, what people are saying. But I do, for anyone who gets mad at me, I forgive you. For anyone that, just woke up in the past few years and think that, this is the most important selection of our lifetime, believe me, I know what you're thinking. I know I've been there, I've gone through it. And you know what? I guess in the old George Carlin, you know, adage that, if voting mattered, they wouldn't let us do it. But with that said, I do have some thoughts on who I think is going to win. Where I think some things are going. But ultimately, not to really give a plug for myself, is that from like an investment standpoint, which is one of the main things I talk about, and really kind of got my the main thing I was always sort of known for is more of my finance, economics, geopolitics. I do not think it makes a one damn bit of difference, especially if we're looking to zoom out 4 years from now, on various markets, who's going to win. Whether my strategy, particularly for people who are close to retirement, is not going to change no matter if Puppet A or Puppet B gets in. And I had a Facebook post right around this time, I think it was exactly 4 years ago, saying no matter who wins the election, the real winner is going to be Bitcoin. And I'm pretty sure we zoomed out on that. That was a pretty good pretty good analysis of who ended up winning. But no matter who gets in there, the ball of tyranny is always getting moved down the field. Our rights were always being lost. The national debt is always going up. And so, for me, my biggest issue and how I became an activist was on the Federal Reserve, was being end the Fed, eventually realizing that what we call currency, what we call money, which is really currency, is actually debt. So if we're and there's no more important issue than this. So if we're the only two people on an island, just me and you, and I create the first and only $100 that's ever been in existence, and I lend it to you because you want to go make widgets, and so you borrow $100. It's a 1 year loan, 3% interest means at the end of year one you owe me $103. Well, how do you pay me $103 if we only created $100? You've got to borrow more money, and that is how our system, I'll say, works in air quotes, is that we have this modern day slave system where people that never had the money to begin with are now owed interest and stealing from the fruits of our labor. And this is at the heart of every issue. It's at the absolute heart of why there's inflation, at the absolute heart of why there's poverty, at the absolute heart of why there's war, at the absolute heart of you name any other pet issue that you care about, it all comes back to the money. But then, even one level up from that, it comes back to the central banks. And in America, it goes back to the Federal Reserve, goes up another level higher than that, goes back to the Bank of International Settlements, which is its own country outside of Basel, Switzerland, that is the central bank of the central banks. And these are all things that they don't want you talking about. I mean, I drive by all these signs pretty much every day that says, Trump high, Trump, or no, it says Trump low prices, Kamala high prices. Like, yeah, it's a quick little, bumper sticker that anyone that really doesn't know anything, certainly about economics and finance, is going to see that and think, okay, yeah, things were a lot better under Trump. Well, I've got news for you. It was nothing that Trump did was the reason why. I mean, if he was still in there, if he was in here the past 4 years, these high prices would have came whether he was in there or not. And so, that's one of the really disingenuous things that I see about Trump, especially when it talks about unemployment. I mean, I wrote a book on how they rigged these numbers called How It's Rigged, where it was going after Obama using all this stuff. And so I would love if he were to get in there, with, oh, I've got the greatest economy in the history of the world. Why? Because the stock market's high? Well, the stock market's even higher underneath these current clowns in there. So, there is a saying, live by the sword, die by the sword. And so if you're going to say, you've got the greatest economy in the history of the world because the stock market's at the highest. Well, what about Weimar Germany? I mean, their stock market went up about 20 billion% from 1919 to 1923. I think gold was up about a trillion%, and priced in Reichmark, obviously. And then silver was up about 10 trillion%. Past performance, no indication of future returns. But if we're going into who I think is going to win, and I think maybe first off, it might be better to actually talk about, the pros and cons from, like, the standpoint of a globalist of who gets in there. And I also do wanna point out that in 2016, one of the very first radio show I was ever on was Ernest Hancock, Declare Your Independence, and the guest that was on right before me, was I'm trying to think of her name. It was the lady that wrote or was the producer for Hacking Democracy. Okay, Bev Harris, and she was also on there with a guy. It wasn't Benny Johnson, or it was something like that. And he was actually a black Democrat out of Memphis, Tennessee. He was also a computer programmer, sitting on the board of elections. So he was kind of in that unique space where he was able to read code, made code, all that sort of stuff, but also on the board of elections as well. And what he saw is at the actual machine level that what they were doing is they were able to say, let's say they could take a fraction of your vote. So they'd take, let's say 48% of the vote, might go to the Republicans, 50% ends up going to the Democrats, they throw the Libertarians, the Green parties, each a percent or two, and then and so they're able to match up how many people are actually voting. Because the hard part is, you don't know if 50,372 people are going to come up to your precinct. You don't really know how much people are at the precinct. So if you are able to algorithmically, steal the votes by apportioning off a certain percentage, then that way at the end of the day the numbers end up balancing. And you never hear anybody talking about that. I mean, except for that interview that was 8 years ago that I was actually a part of. You never hear anybody ever discuss that stuff ever. You hear the Dinesh D'Souza stuff. You hear the vote early, vote often. You hear the dead people voting. You hear obviously like the mail-in ballots. And, people amassing huge amounts of ballots and all dumping them at once. You see all the other more like low-level retail fraud that goes on. Quite a bit. You see all that sort of stuff, but you never really see them talk about fraction magic. And I was talking about things like, securing the vote through blockchain voting, and this is before I was, further down my anarchist path that I'm on today. But you don't really see, so if there is going to be a vote, there should be at least be a fair and accurate, honest vote. But at the end of the day, you're never going to have a legitimate moral system because I don't have the right to go ahead and rob my neighbor. And these are, and probably one of the best books on this would be Larkin Rose, somewhere right behind me, is his most dangerous superstition. He was also at the Art of Liberty, or their event that they put on at Liberty on the Rocks, Sedona, this past weekend. But I guess in given the pros and cons from the standpoint of the system, maybe that's the best way of putting it. If Kamala gets in or stays in, obviously they've got their stooge, they've got their puppet, who's going to do their unquestionable bidding, for the they them those, no questions asked. You've got the globalist no in there. You've got Kamala at the helm of World War III, which is probably something the globalists would want. But some of those same pros are probably also the cons as well. One of the biggest cons is that she is an obvious stooge. One of the biggest cons is nobody likes her. Uh, and it would just be so obvious that maybe people just, get completely disillusioned from the whole system because they do want people to actually think their votes count. They want people to participate in their own slavery, and they don't want people to get so disillusioned that all of a sudden they don't really have the moral high ground because, what if all of a sudden no one's voting, and would they have any legitimacy to be running our lives if, people aren't voting at all? And so, I think that is one of the risks that the system has of putting her in there. And I do hate even really talking about any of this stuff. And part of it is, when we're voting with our attention, uh, it is energy, and really, it's probably definitely not the best use of energy that we could that we could possibly have, because a lot of it is, it's stealing our loosh, it's stealing our energy, it's stealing, you know, anything good that we could be doing with our time and focusing it on something that we don't have a lot of control over. And and I see a lot of these pundits, a lot of mainstream alternative media type people out there, and it's always about, yeah, of course they rigged the election, but we've got to vote even harder and we've got to overwhelm the system, and just like all they want to do for 3.5 years is, as soon as one election's done, it's right on to the next selection, and it's always the most important selection of our lifetime. And instead of getting actual real tangible things that we could do to really kind of take things back, it's always, it's always, hey, we got to have this, white knight in shining armor come over and save us. And so I don't, want to have the best political show ever. I don't want to have any political show because it's a waste of our time. It's a waste of our energy. But I guess with that said, getting back on my train of thought over here is, there are some pros for the globalists if Trump gets in there. The biggest pro, and we saw this in 2016, is, people are going to say, see, look, the system works. We've got Donald Trump in there, and it's going to start, giving people this false sense of we're going to see people have this false sense of, you know, we can have hope in the system. We can believe in the system. We can actually have some faith that things are going the way that we saying we as in me, but the things going the way that we want them. And I will say, I don't disparage anyone that is going to go vote for Trump, especially if it is for, and my audience is going to be more libertarians, anarchists, minarchist type people, anyways. So, I'm attending people again. I don't really care. We're all at different stages of, of our journey, at different stages of, what shoes we've walked in to get to the point where we're at today. But I think also if Trump gets in there, it might put a lot of people back to sleep. So just like in 2016, after Trump won, and a lot of people just went to sleep for 4 years, or certainly went to sleep for at least a year or two before the whole pandemic, and that was go time. I mean, in 2017 when he first got in there, Republicans controlled everything, and what got done? I mean, hardly anything. But if you are gonna, I would say if you're gonna have a gun held to your head, Trump would be the way to go, just from the standpoint of, he has said he's going to free Ross day one. I actually have wrote a letter to him last go around in the 2016 selection on behalf of Lynn Ulbrich, and again this time as well, pointing out and then actually we had gotten in front of Mike Lindell through one of my contacts, and made the case to try to free Ross, but unfortunately that got in front of Mike Lindell on January 6th, and there was more important things to do. And then they made all sorts of deals with Trump of like, hey, we're really going to go after you if if you don't take this name off the list. And that's a whole. But I would love to see Ross Ulbricht freed, and and I truly hope that Trump can win just to free Ross. But I'm not gonna. I've been at this long enough that I'm not gonna hold my breath, and also know that even if he somehow squeaks out the win, that and in the fair market, in a fair election, not market, but yeah, in a fair election, I think he wins hands down. It's not even a contest. But the fact is, they still have Fraction Magic in play. They still have, and maybe some of you saw this. The only bread and circus that I watch at all, it happens to be Formula One. And actually, on the Formula One race from last weekend, not this past weekend, but the one before in Mexico City, they had a little image on the bottom of the screen for Harris at 52%, Trump at 47%, that they flashed during the Mexican Grand Prix. And that seems pretty odd that you'd already have, infographics declaring who you think the winner is going to be when, when the vote hasn't even happened yet. And then you also have, I believe that there's certain, that, and maybe some of you guys can even tell me in the chat, but I believe there is also some sort of, drill they're running that day on, cybersecurity and elections, a drill. And we all know, drills just like a 9/11. They're running drills of, planes hitting the Pentagon or hitting, hitting the World Trade Centers, that day. And so, that's one of the tactics they use is using drills. That way they have plausible deniability. I mean, here in Arizona, you don't have to rig the entire state. I mean, all you need to do is rig Maricopa County. And don't worry, because in Maricopa County, we've got a guy, and you can't even make this up, but our board of supervisors chairman is literally named Bill Gates. So we've got, and Bill Gates has got the eyes of the world around Maricopa County, a different Bill Gates, obviously. And I think there's some other lady, his like second in command over there is like her last name looks, it's something like liar. So we've got Bill Gates and a liar. So yeah, I feel pretty good about, how things are going to be going over here. And, it doesn't matter how many recounts and counts they want to do, because once you get these fake ballots, over this line, like it's into the system, you're never getting it back out of the system. And so it's garbage in, garbage out. I have no faith at all that, and I'm not trying to blackmail people, because we have a lot of power in everything that we do. I just know that since my main issue is the fact that we have debt based money, just in the system, that if we're gonna, you know, have all sorts of bullshit, being spewed out of like, oh, we're gonna go and pay down the debt. Well, how are you gonna go and pay? Well, did it work last time? I mean, in 2015, 2016, Trump said he's gonna pay down the debt in 8 years, and had more debt in 4 years than Obama had in 8. Oh well, he had a pandemic. Well, you know what? He got fooled into the pandemic. So, whether he did it deliberately or got fooled, neither one of those are a great option. And I do think a lot of the stuff he says is funny. I think a lot of, I like, the candor that he can talk. Probably seems like he'd be a good. I mean, I don't drink. He doesn't drink, but seemed like he'd be a good guy, to get a beer with. But uh, I don't. No one needs a savior. We need ourselves. Uh, we need to have. There are so many different things that we can do to take things back, and it really starts with getting our own sovereignty. It starts with trying to promote decentralization. It starts with taking our money back, because if we try fixing things, but we still have this debt-based monetary system, we're not really fixing anything. Our kids and our grandkids are still gonna be slaves, and this has always been the fight, which is why you have, was it Thomas Jefferson in, like, 1790 or something like that, said, "If we ever allow private central banks to issue the currency and credit of our nation, first by inflation, then by deflation, we'll be homeland on the continent our forefathers conquered." I can never remember if it was him or Ben Franklin that said that, but, this has always been the fight. And so, the fact that no one's out there talking about debt-based money, I like the fact that he's talking about Bitcoin, but guess what? Bitcoin, as much as I like that, that was hijacked in 2017. There's a whole book, Hijacking Bitcoin, by Roger Ver, which, as soon as he put out the Roger Ver, what did he end up what happened to Roger Ver? The week he put out that book, they rolled him up in Spain and put him in, I don't think he's in jail. I think he, made bond, but anyway, he's not out of the woods yet. And so, there is, but let me actually look at some of these comments over here, because it's been a long time since I've been on here. Richard Witt, nice to see you again. Thank you, I appreciate that. Let's see, chaos. Trying to figure out how they actually do this. Yeah, silver is real money. And I've got no problem with silver. I don't think that there's any, one silver bullet to, kind of make it through things. So, do your own research. But I am a fan of precious metals, fan of bullets and guns, and farmland and Bitcoin. And if they try to take down the whole grid, well, guess what? At that point, Bitcoin is not going to be that valuable, and the other things I named will. And so, I think there are certain hedges, to be made here. But getting back to, what I think this eventual outcome is gonna be, and I'll kind of give the quick version of this, is I think Trump will have the lead, just like he did the last go around, and, maybe they're gonna give him that lead for a week or 2, but then they're gonna have some sort of shenanigans, some sort of chorus on the left that, and they're gonna have, obviously, like, this air of moral superiority, and then they will find whatever they need to find to cheat him out of that win. And this time, like, the proverbial Mike Pence is going to be Kamala Harris, because she's the VP, and so she's the one that's gonna have to certify the election. And I could see them, having it where everybody basically knows that Trump won, especially that everybody has their guard up this time, unlike last time. And they're gonna be, the left's gonna have, like, their own sort of January 6th type thing, but they're gonna have the moral high ground to be able to, cause chaos and do whatever they want, because the media gives them cover. But, ultimately, I could see them trying to throw him in jail, so maybe he wins, and I'll use wins in a quote, but then they try to throw him in jail beforehand, or they say, "Hey, Colorado or this state or that state actually, is in retrospect kicking you off the election because you're guilty of this," or "We found these, 274,000 votes over here, and now they all got moved." And it's going to be obvious, but, whatever side ends up winning, they're going to foment as much hatred, as much division, and as much divisiveness as possible, in order to, basically rile everybody up, get everybody at each other's throats. I wouldn't be surprised if they had, they'll have some, like, some good old boy Southerner that listens to Alex Jones, but, is really the Fed boys, and do some sort of race baiting, to, maybe they'll do something to some black people, or they'll burn down a church, or do something in order to make it seem like now it's like a racist thing, to get like another leg up on their, air of moral superiority. And then I really don't see this being settled, before Thanksgiving, unless it's Kamala. But like I said, in a fair world, Trump wins all day. But you know what? Life isn't fair. This certainly isn't fair. And and just because of Ross Ulbricht, yeah, I would rather see Trump win on that account. But yeah, we've got the poly market results right now is where people are putting real money at is showing Trump is going to win. But you also have the stock market as well, and the stock market, generally speaking, if the stock market is right around an all time high, you've got like pretty much like a 90% chance that the president is or that the incumbent is going to win. And so based on that, it would show Kamala. But we've got all these different rigged systems that are going on. Yeah, I think I already showed those fake results. Yeah, we've got Bill Gates securing everything, a different Bill Gates, but you've got Chairman Bill Gates. And another kind of weird thing that's going on, and this is my main wheelhouse, would be the economic market. So even though, and I do plan on making a whole video on this, and for my clients, I've been talking about this now for at least the past couple months. But we have the Fed cutting rates. I think it was like right around the 16th, so September 16th, and we had the Fed funds rate. Uh, well, this is the 10-year Treasury, but even though the Fed funds rate was cut 50 basis points, you have the 10-year Treasury was sitting in at like 3.6 back then, and now it's sitting at 4.3. So you actually had the bond market going up, and so that's going to slow down economic activity because a lot of people are waiting to try to refinance homes or maybe waiting to buy a home until or to move until rates are going down. And so you've actually seen this crazy scenario where the Fed fund rates are going down while the market is actually forcing up the bond yields, and that has been something I've been was talking about way out ahead of time, especially with what's going on in the bond market, which is actually much more important than the stock market, because at the end of the day, we have just a massive amount of unrealized losses in the banking sector, a massive amount of unrealized losses in the commercial real estate sector right now. And so they're going to need to do something to, have but it's gonna be some sort of false flag or some sort of something or other. They're gonna or some sort of scheme where maybe the Fed comes in or they get some sort of program to start buying longer term bonds to artificially push the price down to stimulate the economic activity, which is only going to make the inflation end up getting worse. But I could definitely see something like that being in the cards. Now, a little surprised if that didn't already happen. Now, I guess with the Fed lowering rates, on September 16th, I mean, I guess it's already kind of it kind of already is, all their economic, chicanery that's already going on. But yeah, so I see Trump initially winning, and then in order to piss off the Trump people as much as possible, it gets stolen from them again. This time, even more obvious because there's way more people, who are alert and who are hip to what's going on. And then they put in Kamala, and we all know she didn't really win. And, especially where I'm at right now in Arizona. I mean, there is not a snowball's chance in hell that she's actually that they actually won last time, that the Democrats won last time. So even though I'm saying this as an anarchist of, don't even believe in the traditional voting, because even if your vote did count, well, and if you are going to actually take the time to vote, it actually does make a lot more sense to get engaged actually in the primaries, or trying to become like a precinct committeeman, or trying to become a delegate. Those are all things that, if you're going to vote, voting in the primaries, sort of the biggie, because, a relatively small amount of people are then going to, select who's up there. But, oh, wait, guess what? They didn't, silly Tim, they didn't even have a primary for the Democrats. They just installed Kamala in there. So, you know what? I guess I stand corrected. And I knew last time, I was sure as shit they're going to steal it last time. Everyone and I must have said it over 100 times going back to 2017, never wavered, never was on both sides of the equation. Same thing with 2016 as well. And this time, I don't really know. And I also don't really care either, um, because I think even because if Trump does get in there, I wouldn't. I mean, other than Ross being freed, I wouldn't. I would be careful what you wish for because I mean, look what happened last time he got in there. I mean, last time he got in there, they staged a whole pandemic. They shut down the whole world for at least 2 years, 3 years, depending on where you're at. More debt that's ever been created by any president ever. More freedoms taken away than ever. And so I could actually see them if he does. The one caveat I have of maybe, I don't say this as hope, but it's not really that much hope because maybe they let him in there, but maybe they let him in there because he's got this big, hard on going after Iran, and so and obviously loving Israel. So I could see him, there being some sort of false flag, you know, of Israel probably bombing itself, which is probably what happened in October 7th of last year. If I had to take a guess, and I'm not bombing themselves, but they were mowing down their own concert people, from the helicopters. I mean, that seems pretty obvious. And but yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother subject. But yeah, the most advanced, secure border in the world that they know if like a cockroach is on the other side, didn't know that paragliders were coming through. I mean, come on, give me a break. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, I could see Hamas staging something when, Hamas was created by Israel, and then that being sort of like the impetus to then have Trump, going after Iran and then being pulled into like a bigger World War III, even though he's sort of the peace candidate. Because they always have these peace candidates. If you go back to World War I, Woodrow Wilson was the peace candidate, and I mean, he not only got us World War I, he got us the Federal Reserve, got us the IRS, got us income tax, got us World War I, which then would have led to World War II. So, it is a be careful what you wish for because, even though, the big reason why I wanted Trump to win in 2016 was to prevent World War III, uh, which I thought was going to be between Russia and Ukraine. And it's not because I'm some genius, it's because I knew the State Department was, spending $5 billion in 2014 funding neo Nazis at the behest of Victoria Nuland. And, anyone paying attention at the time, knew that as well. And so, it is a little frustrating being, kind of hip to all this stuff and being, awake to such a degree. But yeah, I would say, yeah, be careful what you wish for because, there is a part of me that's hoping Trump wins, but, it's really only because, I am friends with Lynn Ulbricht, Ross's mother, and, I'd love to see Ross getting freed. So, I'm not going to hold it against anybody that's, voting for that because, maybe the system lets them win because, it ends up getting their hot war going with Iran, and I see that being, you know, and it also lets people think that, it believes in the system. It helps keep the theater going. Uh, so that is something to definitely be careful of and to watch out for if he does get in there. And conversely with Kamala, and I've seen some people, I guess from like a market perspective, I'm trying to think who it was. It was Paul Poy of Edgewall. I think he had a meme the other day that said, on the one hand we've got the Bitcoin crypto president and Trump. On the other hand, we've got a lady whose policies are so crazy, especially when it comes to all this money printing, things she's going to do with inflation. That that at long run that would be good for Bitcoin too. Now, in the immediate, yeah, it might go down, might be a bad thing to do, not giving investment advice. Do your own research on all this stuff, but yeah, in a long enough time horizon, I absolutely see, um, you know, Bitcoin benefiting from either one of these 2 stooges. 'Cause and at the end of the day, you have the Federal Reserve has much, much more to do with anything going on economically than whatever puppet gets put in there. And what and who was you guys remember who did Donald Trump pick as Federal Reserve Chairman? Hmm, would that be Jerome Powell? And then who did Joe Biden pick as Federal Reserve Chairman? Hmm, hmm. Would that also be Jerome Powell? And then who gave a podcast the day that he did that, where I absolutely went off the handle, probably dropping like 100 f bombs, being so mad that he picked Jerome Powell back then, and all the Trump people saying, "Oh, 5D chess, you're not smart enough on this, Tim." Jerome Powell, he's really a white hat, and he's a great guy, and save it. I mean, he shouldn't even pick any Federal Reserve governor unless he was going to pick I think the guy from M&T Bank. I think his name is James Allison. Not 100% sure on that. Who was like an end the Fed guy. Yeah, maybe you pick somebody like that. You pick a Ron Paul, use the bully pulpit to expose what's going on, do something like that. But I mean, come on. I mean, it's a lot of, and then my whole thing is, what I was almost thinking of going ahead and hold my nose, voting for Trump just because of the free Ross, at least putting that out there. But, I'm at the end of the day, I'm not a whore, and you definitely would have to have that also married with the fact that if you were to come out and say, "You know what? I got duped into this whole pandemic. Should have never done it. All these vaccines are bad." We're on YouTube, so I wonder how much more on YouTube will be on that. All the jibbity jabs, none of them are good. All of them are poison. not just these new mRNA ones. But if he would really come out and say something like that, and with the Ross Ulbricht, okay. And and so I can understand that people got hope, that people, New Day for America, but if he gets in there, but at the end of the day, you're just wasting a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of attention on politics, which is why I don't have the best political show, which is why I don't have any political show over here, because I actually did want to change the news. And so what the content we're going to have coming out here is we're starting a Truth to Freedom Foundation, or what that's gonna be is we're gonna have a website that's gonna have, like someone that's just waking up to stuff, and maybe they wanna learn more about geoengineering, or maybe they wanna learn more about 9/11, or maybe they wanna learn more about chemtrails, or maybe they wanna learn more about the Federal Reserve, or maybe they wanna learn more about, things that go into your arm. Maybe they wanna learn more about, you name it, and it's not gonna be, me up there, spouting everything off. I wanna take the best videos from James Corbett, and from Larkin Rose, and Derek Rose, and Josh Sigurdson, and all these other people out there, who've done a lot of work over the years, or on fluoride, or on, and you name it. And I want to have like a one-stop shop. So someone who's got a question on geoengineering, well, here's a link to what in the world are they spraying, why in the world are they spraying, Frankenskies. Here's links to patents. Here's links to these videos, and you know what? It's there's the information. There's the research. Also, I've spent the past couple years. Uh, Reading an absolute ton, probably in the past year, probably read 20 books on ancient civilizations, on the Apocrypha texts, and you kind of see probably a lot of them behind me, probably closer to this side, behind Creature from Jekyll Island, so maybe you can't see them. But I think in order to know what's coming, you've got to know what's already happened. And I was always pretty good about knowing the more contemporary history of what's happened, and knowing the contemporary history of money changing and all that sort of stuff, and finance. But I never looked into Sumerian culture, or Babylonian, or Akkadian, or Assyrian, or Assyrian. And and there's been a lot of really kind of eye opening things. And even from like a religious perspective, I was never, you know, one to be super religious. I grew up Catholic and always hated that. And I think there's probably a reason of how they, kind of turn people off. But the stuff that I've been researching is so interesting, so fascinating. Not going to, talk about it on here, but it's when you kind of zoom out of the, being out of the news for the past 2 years, I was able to, kind of zoom out and uh, study a lot of things that really interest me. And so, while I haven't been doing a lot of videos on here, I've also now been, pretty adept at, learning quite a bit about permaculture, quite a bit about various homesteading, quite a bit about just you know basic sort of construction stuff that I never knew before. And so I've taken the last couple of years really to kind of learn a lot of things outside you know digging into like the day to day stuff that's going on in the news, and I've been able to read lots of books, and instead of spending 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day looking over all these different news headline items that are just going to be out there to really kind of raise your blood pressure. Instead, going through and and trying to learn where we came from, why we're here, uh, and and some of these issues I think are just so much more important than who's going to win tomorrow, because you know what, 4 years from now I think Bitcoin's going to win again, and we're all going to lose. Israel, they're going to win no matter what. All these, the military industrial complex probably going to win no matter what. Big banks are probably going to win no matter what. And I'm not trying to red pill people, because there's a lot of power that we all have in and of ourselves. And and I just know that I couldn't morally go out and vote, knowing for someone that still doesn't get the fact that our money is debt, that the money that we have to use, dollar bill, is debt. And so you know what? The only type of candidate I'd vote for probably is someone. I mean, maybe it might be like a one-off free Ross type thing if they also weren't the godfather of the, you know what. But if someone had a mission of like, you know what, this whole thing's BS. And the fact is, the the fact that we as a collective society care so much about who's president is really the first main problem. Is the fact that the president has so much power that we have to care. Our system was actually designed where Congress was supposed to be the ones who really had the power because we supposedly can affect the outcomes of our congressmen and women a lot easier. And they're local every 2 years, and they're the ones who are supposed to have control of the purse. Really supposed to be ones who have a lot more power than the president. But now they've written themselves in a lot more laws, and also I mean another reason I guess why I think Kamala is going to be selected as well is I don't know what the executive order was, the title of it, but there was an executive order like a week or 2 ago allowing, the military to be used domestically. So, I mean, are they gonna do that and then have Trump get in there? And so, it just seems like I don't know if necessarily know if the globalists, they, them, those know if everything's gonna go according to their own plans because, I don't think there's some, like, omnipotent, controlling everything because there are still a lot of moving pieces in this. But you know what? They're playing for a bad team, but, at the end of the day, I think both teams don't actually truly kinda get it where things are going. Uh, but yeah, let me see some comments over here. Taxes are voluntarily. Who's going to volunteer after this selection? Yeah, I wish that they actually would. And in terms of taxes, if you go to the IRS tax code, you go to like law.edu.cornell subsection 26. Look up what is a U.S. citizen. U.S. citizens are required to pay taxes. Well, a U.S. citizen, according to their own, and I'm not looking at this in front of me, but it's a resident of Washington D.C., America Samoa, Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Guam, and maybe a few other territories I may have forgotten. Or if you're a government worker in some sort of, or you're in the military or collecting Social Security, then yeah, then you probably are a U.S. citizen. Or it says a resident of the states. But then you go through and that same like right underneath it, it says, a resident of the state includes. Well, includes in legalese means only. So it basically it's a circular definition that goes back to U.S. citizens. So even though it tricks you and makes it seem like it's a state, and I'm not advocating anybody do anything with this information because I haven't done stuff with this even myself. But another reason why I don't want to vote is I don't want to. I don't really consider myself a citizen because I'm not a resident of D.C., Puerto Rico, Guam, American Samoa, U.S. Virgin Islands. I'm not. I've never worked for the government. Uh, I have no aspirations of ever working for the government. I've only been to DC probably, twice in my entire lifetime, and I'm also not banking on collecting Social Security either. So you know what? They after the Civil War, Lincoln didn't free the slaves; he just made everybody a slave. With also turning everything into America Inc. Because being an American and being a U.S. citizen are two completely different things. So, you can be out there and say America, but, you know, in a legal definition, they've tricked everybody through this massive PR into thinking that are a citizen of the U.S. when the U.S. has turned itself basically into a corporation. So a lot of things that we say that, oh, that's illegal and that's against the Constitution. Well, the Constitution doesn't apply to the U.S. citizens, because they've changed the definition of all this stuff. Um, and so, I mean, I don't see Trump talking about that or, decentralization. Like, yeah, he's talking about crypto and Bitcoin, but probably because, finger in the air, see what way the wind's blowing. You can get a whole bunch of donation money. But, I don't see him proposing anything to save the world or how you're going to use that to, decentralize things. And yeah, there's some, efforts to stop CBDCs. But for all intents and purposes, we pretty much already have a CBDC right now, and it's called the dollar. The dollar already runs on a Oracle, basically spreadsheet, and so there might be some sort of parlance where they don't have a CBDC, but they have some sort of digital dollar that's issued to the treasury, and it'll be the same thing. It'll be same thing with a very small, you know, difference. But yeah, I don't really see um, yeah, I don't. I think at the end of the day, they're gonna have Kamala still get in there, and you might be like, "Oh, Tim, you're some idiot or whatever." But you know what? If it was a fair election, there's no way she's getting in there. But you know what? They don't have a fair election. I think they want to get this divisiveness. They want to seem like that the right is just a whole bunch of, and I say right in air quotes because it's all two wings of the same bird. Um, but they're gonna have the right. And with all the illegals and all the everything else in here, they've reached. I see, there's very little chance of this thing ever getting turned around until maybe it gets so bad that people are woken up. But I think that unless you've got the answer to something, you're wasting your time voting for the lesser of two evils because you know what, Trump unfortunately is not the answer to all this, and he makes way too many things about himself. You know what? If anything, he's just more like a catalyst for the people. But and there was no one that was a bigger fan of him, and I'm embarrassed to say this, than I was in 2016. I was super pissed off the Libertarian Party, particularly Bill Weld, when he said that AR-15s are dangerous, but handguns are even more dangerous than AR-15s, and we need to work on getting rid of both of them. At that point, I was like, I've had it with the Libertarian Party. Switched my name from Libertarian Advisor to the Liberty Advisor, created a page on Facebook, was targeting libertarians, independents, and battleground states, was reaching millions of people from a standstill. And guess what? Have never had another new follower on Facebook since November 16th, 2016. So we're coming up on 8 years of never having another new follower on there. But it's not about me. It's not about like, oh yeah, I'm not getting my dopamine hits for not having a new follower. It's about information that's not able to get out there anymore. Even this, I mean, this is gonna be seen like a fraction of people. Part of it is I'm not consistent, not regular, and yeah, there's plenty of stuff that falls on me. But there's also the fact that shadow banning is real. There's they push certain people out there. There's another guy whose name is Tim and starts with a P as well. Getting paid 100 G's, for every episode. To basically, sit on the fence and, probably dupe you into a bunch of stupid stuff that, yeah, I better just stop before I get myself in trouble going on with, uh, with that one. But, let me see. The people are chattel to the government. Yeah, and actually, what is the word government really? The word government is, comes from the Latin root word gubernare, which is to control, and mente, which is mind. It's mind control, and that's all government is. It's certain techniques of manipulation that those are using and running game on us in order to basically get us to be their slaves. And at the end of the day, if our money currency is a debt instrument that's backed by a treasury bill, bond, or note, we're never going to be free. And so you can't pay off the debt with debt. You can't ever, really get ahead if we've got these private central bankers who are just, taking money out of thin air that they never had to begin with. They go, oh, 10 trillion new dollars, and thank you for the interest. We're going to go and take that for ourselves. So these bankers never had the money to begin with, and then they get to actually buy real stuff, I guess, which is why Thomas Jefferson said, if we ever allow these private central bankers, first by inflation, then by deflation, we'll end up homeless on the continent our forefathers conquered. Except now they can't afford deflation because, in a true deflationary sense, the whole system would absolutely implode in itself and then end up in a hyperinflation, or we just go into a hyperinflation. But they're not going to just let us go into one. They're going to have some sort of war. That way, China or Russia or Iran or the Easter Bunny or somebody gets blamed, other than the fact that this was always in the cards and was always going to happen to begin with, which has been my running thesis for 10 years now, unfortunately. So, I don't know if that was the message people wanted to hear. You know what? There's a part of me that thinks, even though I'm hoping that I'm wrong on this. I'm hoping that just for Ross's sake that Trump does get in there, but I'm not participating myself fully. But if you or at all, uh, it's just not going to get fooled again on this stuff. And last last go around, even though I was a delegate for the Libertarian Party, and that's one thing I've not discussed at all. That loser that's in there right now that is wanting kids to transition themselves and drag queen story time. Have not ushered a single word out of my mouth. I've not even uttered his name once, and I'm not going to be. And you know what? I can certainly see, and it is a brilliant, brilliant move on behalf of Trump to you know at least throw this whistle at the libertarian, who are out there for free Ross. And like I said, I did have I wrote him another letter this year that Lynn, on behalf of Lynn Albrecht, laying out the case of what that would mean for him in terms of freeing Ross, and uh, and why I thought that if you're because the Libertarian Party, yeah, they get like 1 or 2%, but the people that are identify as libertarians are way bigger than that 1 or 2%. It's just somehow the Libertarian Party always has a knack for basically nominating whoever the worst possible candidate is, that's gonna have the least amount of traction. If you're gonna have the least amount of traction, you might as well have some hardcore dude that's up there, calling everything as BS, calling everything out as a scam, telling people not even to vote. I could rock with that type of message, but instead, these guys who actually think they're gonna change the world, but it's basically a bunch of leftists who are up there and yeah, so there is a lot of, so I wouldn't be, I mean, if the Libertarian Party gets, half of 1%, I'd probably be surprised this time. So, I think it was a brilliant tactic by Trump, mainly because it's been my idea for, the past, 6 years trying to get at him to, have this be something that they would be up to. Just last go around, everyone thought he had it in the bag, and nobody wanted to listen to me. And by the time we got in front of Mike Lindell, it was already too late. And January 6th then happened on that day, actually, when we were able to get a letter in front of Mike Lindell about trying to free Ross. So you know what? For his sake and for his mom's sake, I hope it happens. But not going to be holding my breath. And if I was to put my money on something, I would say, the system is going to put Kamala in there. But if they do put Trump in there, then, they either, even though it's all theater, they either actually, and I'm not in case the Secret Service listen to this, I'm predicting that they either do some other attempt at him, or, and that way they've got their guy Vance in there, and Vance, it's connected to Peter Thiel, and Peter Thiel is connected to Bilderberg, and then they've got their guy on the inside in anyways. And once again, heads we lose, tails we also lose. And maybe he's, you know, even if Trump wins, I don't really see them letting him get in there, and they're just gonna the hysteria is gonna be ratchet up even more. But that's a lot of reason why I spend my days now going through and uh, doing a lot of homesteading, and I will have videos on that as well. Kind of showing you guys what I've been up to over here. You know, you know, actionable advice and things that you guys can do. To kind of follow in my footsteps. To be more self sufficient. And one more thing I'll promote too is if you want to go to my website at thelibertyadvisor.com, I am promoting what I'm calling the Great Reset Retirement Blueprint. And essentially, what I'm going over is the 7 biggest risks retirees face that can really ruin your retirement. We're going to talk about CBDCs, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, this whole coming cashless society, and I'm going to lay out what my strategy is, especially for people that are close to retirement or in retirement. So if you have parents who are out there who are within 10 years of retirement or maybe just retired or been retired for a while, I do have some strategies, especially when you take a look at the landscape and you see what's going on in the bond market. And that is something where my very first podcast ever in 2016, I did basically nail exactly what was going to happen 2 years ago when a lot of these banks went under, like Signature Bank and First Republic and Silicon Valley Bank, and really the mechanism of why that happened was something I discussed in episode 1, and it had to do with interest rate risk. And then that I'd also talked about my question that made Janet Yellen, and so a lot of retirees that wanted to be safe, put their money into air quote safe bonds, and people that bought 10-year bonds in 2020 probably lost 30-40% of their principal uh, 2 years later in 2022 when the Fed was forced to raise interest rates to combat inflation. And then they're getting paid a piddly amount of interest. Now they've got to wait 10 years to get all their money back, or maybe 8 years in 2022 to get their money back, all while earning nothing, pretty much. And so if they had to pull principal, then they'd have to sell at massive unrealized losses. And the only reason the whole system didn't blow up in 2022 is that they concocted some sort of scheme called the BTFP program, and this this BTFP program, what it was called is the Bank Term Funding Program, and they even want to throw it in our face calling it BTFP because a lot of you might realize there was something known as BTFD, which is buy the effing dip, and so they called it BTFP, and what they did is they created some sort of like special facility. This is the Fed and FDIC And so if you were a bank and you had $1 million bond and now it's $600,000, you get to turn it into the BTFP program. They give you the $1 million back as a loan, but then I'm sure you could probably just roll over that loan. So yeah, they created this program out of thin air a couple years ago in 2022 called the BTFP program. But you or I or our parents or grandparents, we can't go to the BTFP program and turn in one of our bonds and and so you will see people out there saying, "Oh, well, the FDIC had to use up all their money 2 years ago." Well, actually, they didn't because they created the scheme, and they're always out there scheming. So, never underestimate, just the power of, how much these people in power can, scheme to, maintain their power. And you know what? I would venture to say they're going to keep on scheming and keep on doing things and keep on pulling, rabbits out of the hat. That is that is something they're very good at. If there's one thing they're good at, it's, taking what we would think is gonna be, like, this inevitable decline and really, you know, uh, delaying it as much as possible. But yeah, trying to see if there's any questions on here. Uh, Another pandemic in December is possible. Let's see here. Thanks for the stream. Thank you guys. Let's see. I'm gonna go over to Liberty Chat. I'm still trying to I'm going live from a method I've never used before using Restream, which I've used Restream before, but I'm actually using Restream Studio, which I've never used before, and I'm sure there's a few things I've got to do to change around a few things over here. But yeah, back in the Liberty Advisor chat right now. But yeah, no, I appreciate everyone who's watching this live and watching this on the. Part of this was I just want to be able to test out the system, see how it's working, see what we've got going on. But who do you guys think are going to win? Do you think it's Kamala? I mean, selected. That's a better word. Who thinks to be selected? Do we see Kamala? Do we see Trump? Uh, what do you think the system is going to put in? Uh, who do you think? Ultimately, when do you think the selection is going to be decided? Do you think it's going to be decided before the end of this week or after the week or this time next week? I mean, do you think we'll have an answer? And I hope we do, just because it can only take so much of all this stuff going on. But I will pat myself on the back that I've paid almost no attention to a lot of what's been going on. And I was the type of guy from probably 2009 to 2020, probably to about 2017. Uh, absolutely just 18 hours a day of looking into all this stuff and telling everybody about Ron Paul, who got within earshot of me, and constantly trying to campaign for people and coming up with political solutions and voting and at the end of the day, I mean, there's just so many other better things that we could be doing. Uh, and I'm actually trying to be the example on a lot of things. I mean, we also vote with, what food we put into our bodies. We vote with, what food we're out there growing. We vote with, how we maintain ourselves. I mean, people that want to go and spend a whole bunch of time telling people who to go vote for and stuff, but they've got 50 pounds they could lose. You know, you getting in shape and staying healthy for you and your family, that's one of the best votes that you can make. Getting your emotions in check. That's a good, uh, you know, thing that you can. And personally, I'm trying to swear less even on these, trying to get my emotions in check, trying not to, go off the handles and and even though that does get more views and that, and people like some of the rants, which is, why I like Alex Jones or that are, a lot more pretty popular on that. But I get a comment here from Batman. I see it like you. Trump will win, then he'll drag it out in court for a while. I think he gets in. Then the next 4 years, World War III and financial crisis, and yes, I wouldn't discount that Iran angle. So even though they, because the globalists really really want a war with Iran, and I think, you know, if they do let Trump get in there, it lets people at least see like, oh hey, the system works, and we get the war with Iran, even though he's not really talking about it, but. Anyways, yeah, just I'm usually well, A, I'm usually not doing live streams at all, but B, I'm also usually not doing them at night, and that which is why I got these glasses on. So we've got the blue light blocking glasses right on for nighttime not interfere with our circadian rhythm. But anyways, thank you guys so much. I've got to figure out how to end this stream. And uh, actually, you know what? I just realized that there's a chat that I could have opened up on the side of here the entire time. So okay, I know this for next time. I'll have to kind of experiment too with getting some maybe some guests in here as well. But yeah, no, thank you guys so much. And yeah, I'll be doing now that I've got the system tested out and working, and I've got both my computers up and running and everything. We're back at it, and yeah, nice to see everybody back on here. And hope everyone has a good night. And man, and yeah, I guess good luck for however the rest of this week turns out. And just remember, whoever wins, we've all got the power to, have our body their own temples and eat cleanly no matter who wins. We all have the ability to go and start stacking silver or gold or trying to grow food or learning new skills or learning skills to be able to make money and be independent. We all have powers to be able to do things no matter what puppet gets in there. And, and I'm committing to, being a better version of myself, making more money, being a better person, all this stuff, no matter who the system ends up selecting in there. And, people might say, oh, well, if Kamala gets in, the market's going to crash and this and that. Well, you know what? I'll figure out a way to make lemonade out of this lemons. Actually, I'm growing about 5 or 6 different types of actually, I think I've got like 5 or 6 lemon trees out there in the back. So yeah, we're gonna be really good at making lemonade out of whatever they throw at us. And yeah, okay, if Kamal gets in and starts raising taxes and doing a whole bunch of bad stuff, okay, well, good. I've also got programs for people and where they can get into different types of foundations or trusts that would be very beneficial to those types of people. And okay, I win on that front too. And I see young men are more likely to fight in World War III for Trump than Harris. Yeah, that's a very good point. It looks like that was an older one, but okay. I'll talk to everybody later. I'm rambling at this point, and thanks for jumping on. Thanks for everyone that's leaving comments.